Alrighty, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started. If you haven't already, if you don't mind going ahead and scanning this QR code, it'll link you to our link tree, the same one that we've been viewing the past few times. The very first link should be to a Google form. If you don't mind just filling it out, and it'll help us to take attendance for today. Cool, perfect. How are y'all doing today, guys? Are we doing okay? Good, good. Alrighty. So for today's meeting, we are going to be talking about, oh my goodness, the prerequisites of physical therapy school, what it takes to get into it, what the application process is going to look like, and all the different pieces that you'll be including on the application. We'll also do a very quick demo about how to go about finding all of these requirements that are necessary at certain schools, because all of them are a little bit different. And it could be a little bit of a process, like navigating a website. So, especially PT schools, because they just load all the information up. So we'll go over that, and then we'll just talk about what's coming up next for the club. Alrighty, so let's get into it. Overview of the application process. These are the main things that you're going to see on pretty much every single DPT app that you'll fill out. The number one, we'll first talk about commonly required coursework / the prerequisite courses that are required in order to get into PT school. We'll talk a little bit about observation hours. I know we've obviously talked quite a bit about them up to this point, but we'll get into the nitty-gritty about what they're really looking for. We'll talk about letters of recommendation, test scores, specifically the GRE, personal statements and essays, the part of the requirement that everyone loves so much. And then all of the little extra things that certain programs may require, including interviews, resumes, extracurriculars, etc. Alrighty.
Okay, so some of the most commonly required coursework that you're going to see is obviously anatomy and physiology. Really hone in on those classes if you're planning on doing PT, because it will come back to haunt you later. Even in doing aid work and things like that, you need to know your anatomy. So definitely don't just study for the test, study to remember it. It's very important. And then Gen Chem, I know we all hated it. You got to do it. I'm sorry. And then also 2 semesters of general biology. Some courses you can do like a microbiology, but I know Long Beach specifically, you need the 211, 212 series with the lab. So definitely just keep a lookout on your which schools you're applying to. And then you also need 2 semesters of physics. We are STEM fields. It's unfortunate. And then also psychology, you need a general psychology, and then some programs also need an upper division psychology. So like here, that would be, I believe 370 is like abnormal psych. Things like that do count for that. And then you also need a statistics course. So that can be general statistics. It can be biostats if you have a lab, I believe. So again, different schools offer different things, but general statistics is going to be in there as well.
And then, yeah, Lily kind of mentioned it, but we just have this extra piece. Depending on the school, you could probably replace certain classes if you have a higher division course. So for example, for biology, if you were to take, let's just say microbio, which is a 300 level course, for some programs that may be able to replace the lower divisions. Same thing, I think with Long Beach's PT program, like Shimi mentioned, abnormal psych is an upper division course. If you were to take that class, let's just say instead of general psychology, that would be okay. And then all of the little stars are just it has to have a lab. So if you were to take like a online anatomy course over the summer super fast and there was no lab part of it, then unfortunately that course won't count.
Yep.
Alrighty, and then oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. So we kind of talked about it already, but all of us are here students at Long Beach. So if you were a true freshman at Long Beach, this is what your coursework will look like and what will count for all of these courses. So is anyone not taking anatomy and physiology yet? No? Okay, cool. Perfect. Working on Gen Chem 2 maybe still. Physics classes might still be working on. But yeah. Alrighty.
Okay, and then here are some required coursework for specific programs. So these are the ones that not everybody is going to require. I will admit, if you're an exercise science major specifically, a lot of what we do in our program will like cover some of these, but not all of them. So you just got to kind of be on a lookout. So like the first one, if you look at English writing, SDSU, which is San Diego State, and Western University, both Southern California schools, they require an English writing. And then you have upper division biology, which would be covered by like that microbio. That's also at San Diego State. medical terminology, which is something that you don't necessarily have to take here. So that would be an extra course that's for Loma Linda and University of St. Augustine. Communications course, which I believe we all have to take here, but just as an added, that's needed by Loma Linda and Mount St. Mary's. Then we also have biomechanics and XPhys, which if you're an exercise science major, you'll be taking those. Good luck. And then AP course credit doesn't necessarily transfer. So you really have to check with your school. That's going to be the mantra today. Check with the school you want to apply to. Just assume that it's not going to, especially if it's like an AP bio. No, you got to take the full series in college level. And then to note, most programs allow no more than 2 courses in progress during the semester prior to starting the program. So as an example, for Long Beach, they have a summer start in May. So you cannot take 2 or more prereqs in the spring. They have to be done by the previous fall. Hence why I am a whole cycle behind. But it is what it is. So just make sure that you kind of map out your degree essentially. Like it's extremely important to make sure you get all these classes done in time if you want to go straight to grad school, which is not the worst thing in the world, by the way, if you have to take a gap year.
Perfect. And before I guess I move on, any questions on the coursework? No? Okay, perfect. Cool. Alrighty, so then how do we prove that we took all these courses? Will be through our transcripts, and then these schools also look at GPA. So the minimum cumulative GPA for most PT schools, if not all of them, is a 3.0. So the cumulative GPA is all of the college classes that you took throughout your entire college career. So that will be considered, and then as well, the prerequisite GPA, so all of the courses that we just mentioned, you also have to have a 3.0 in those as well. I will say just a little star asterisk, some programs might let you slide if you have just under a 3.0, but all of the rest of your pieces of the application are going to have to shine, if that makes sense. So I know some schools as well kind of, they give you an option to answer the question of if your GPA is reflective of what you actually are as a student. And they give you an option to write an extra essay to explain, like maybe if you had a situation happen in college that dropped your GPA. But if you can really try to shoot for at least that 3.0. And then most DPT applicants have at least a 3.5 or higher. It's very competitive to get into PST school. So the higher your GPA is, the better off you'll be. And then, like I kind of mentioned, we're going to have to be sending transcripts. The transcripts will have to be official transcripts. They won't accept unofficial transcripts. It has to have that seal of the school on it to make sure that they know that you didn't like fake anything. And yeah, so some programs you will just be submitting it to the PTCast, which is the application site that we'll be using. Other programs may require that you send them directly to the university as well. And then I think you guys may or may not have used sites like Parchment, I mean, to send like your high school transcripts in and stuff. So that's how we'll be sending official transcripts as well. You won't be able to download your own official transcript and then email them because that you could have done something to it. Is the way that they're thinking. So you'll use these official sites in order to send those. And then just keep in mind that sending transcripts can be free, but it also can cost some money. The most expensive one that I've sent so far was like $13, but depending on the undergraduate university or the community college, it might be a little bit higher or lower.
Okay, and then observation hours, the thing we've kind of been hitting home since day one. It is pretty important one. Just as a personal thing, I think it's super important to so that you know this is the field you want to work in. We can talk about it, we can do all this stuff, but unless you're in the field and like experiencing what it's like in a clinic or in a hospital, wherever your setting is, you're not really going to know if this is a career or not for you. So at a personal level, go check it out, actually get involved in something. But for an application level, most programs will require at least 40 hours of observation. That can be volunteer, that can be paid, that can be whatever realm that looks like. But most applicants will have at least 100 hours. So a lot of hospitals and volunteer programs, at least the ones that I've heard about, they do have a 100-hour minimum anyway. So it's usually about a 6-month commitment for a 4-hour shift of once a week. So it's like having another, like a little tiny little, that's 4 hours of your week, right? And then inpatient hours, that's in the hospital setting, are highly recommended by all programs. Some require them, and we'll go into a couple of the ones that do require them. Cal State Long Beach does not. So there are a few that do, there are a few that don't. And then, like I said, observations can be done as a volunteer or as a job opportunity. So Programs don't look at those any differently, like whether you are paid or not. They, as long as you have hours, hours are hours. Okay, so don't, if you can't get a paid position, don't freak out. And then hours must be verified by a licensed physical therapist. So it can't be under an AT, it can't be under a PA, it can't be under an MD, it has to be under a licensed PT. And then a variety of different settings, which you guys have all heard, a variety of different settings is highly recommended.
Get it verified. They just write like a letter.
Yeah, so on the PT CAS, on the actual application site, there'll be a link that you'll fill in those hours, and then after you fill in all the information, it provides an email. So you'll make sure whoever you're studying under, you have their email address. It will send them the email, and then they do it on their end.
Yeah, if you work for like a clinic too, sometimes you can just send it to the clinic themselves and give them a call, send the general clinic info. That part, it doesn't have to be like signed before you leave the door. Like you can do it later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Any questions on this? Yes.
You kind of touched on it, but there's a question from chat. So it says if you have an internship that is rehab, but not specifically physical therapy, would those hours count, or are PT hours specifically required?
So it depends on the program. I would say if you can really try to make it PT specific because it has to be verified by a PT. But those rehab hours aren't going to go unused. When we go over the PT CAS application, I already filled it out, so I'm going to keep that open for you guys, and you guys are going to see like a full view of the PT CAS. I'll show you what it looks like, but there's a difference between observation hours and experience hours. The observation hours is what we're talking about here that have to be verified, that have to be at PT clinic. But the or experience hours talks about everything in general. Your club involvement here is an experience. Other rehab facilities could be experiences. So when we're talking about these 40 hours or 100 hours or whatever minimums, those are specific to PT clinics most of the time. Again, word of the day, make sure that you look at each program specifically. But yeah. Any other questions? Okay, perfect. Alrighty, and then letters of recommendation. So most programs require 3 letters of rec. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes I don't think it goes above 3, actually. So sometimes it's only 2, sometimes it's 3. Most of the time I've been seeing it's 3 though. One of them needs to be from an academic reference. So one of your professors here, they highly recommend that it's from one of the prerequisite courses as well. But if it's not the end of the world. Ideally have it related to the field of physical therapy though. But yeah, so they have to have an academic reference as well as the licensed PT. So ideally the same person who will be checking off your observation hours, if you make a good connection with them, maybe they can write you a letter of rec. That's one thing that I super recommend is that when you guys are doing these observation hours, try to find at least one PT that you can really connect with so that they'll be able to write you this letter of recommendation. And then the last one is typically up in the air. Some schools just say that just get one more. It could be a second academic reference or a second PT. Others really prefer that you use a completely different option. So like a work reference, for example. Just someone that could touch upon your work ethic outside of the physical therapy clinic and outside of the classroom. Again, it depends on the program though. And then please give ample time for your references to write your letter. So when you are connecting with your professors, ask them as soon as possible. And then even if it's like you feel like it's like a year or 2 ahead of when you're planning on applying, at least plant the seed in their ear so that they are aware that that's something that they have to do. And then when you're ready to remind them, when you're ready to apply, make sure you give them, I would say at least 6 weeks before, because they have very busy lives outside of writing your letter of recommendation, unfortunately. But also just to leave time for any like errors that may occur if they can't figure out how to submit it to PT CAS, if anything, if they didn't get the request of the letter of rec, anything like that, just give yourself plenty of time to leave room for those little errors. And then like I kind of mentioned, so start making your connections and building your rapport now. If you guys are in any classes or any prerequisite classes now or any courses that are related to physical therapy like biomechanics and exercise phys, really like try to stand out in the class. I know it's difficult like to stand out in a class, especially if you're not necessarily struggling in it, if you're doing okay, but just always raise your hand. Just make sure that professor like knows your face. And so that when you're walking up to them asking for a letter of rec, they're not just like, I don't know who you are and I can't write anything about you. So
as a little side note to that too, when we say making connections now, that doesn't mean that you walk into this person's office hours and you're like, hey, can you write me a letter of rec? I'm going to DPT school. also be a little bit personable, right? They want to know who you are as a person. That's really what's going to reflect in the letter of rec. That is why letters of rec are important. The application, they're going to see your transcript. They know you're a good student, blah, 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 blah. Everybody has good grades, blah, blah, blah. What might set you apart is those letters of rec. What can speak to you as a person, your attributes, your characteristics. Are you personable? Being in PT, it's a people job. You have to be able to talk to patients. You have to be able to sit comfortably in silence with patients who don't want to speak. There's a wide realm of, you have to be able to be a people person too. So, and if you don't connect with a certain professor, don't force it, right? Most of us are taking 4 or 5 classes a semester. When you get to the operatives, you'll take the multiple professors, or the same professor multiple classes in a row. If that professor doesn't work out for you, that's okay. Like, you don't have to connect with every single one, but maybe just pop into office hours, or even like right after class, go up to them and be like, oh, hey, like, can you remind me what you said about this? Even if you know what they said, just so that they have a little bit of that connection with you too. That's all.
Perfect.
Okay, and then test scores. So the GRE is basically the college level SAT that you do have to take for DPT. I will say some programs you don't have to take the GRE anymore. So if you're really bad at like standardized testing, you're like, I want nothing to do with that. There are some schools, and I think there's more now than there have been, who are kind of just like the SAT kind of got passed off. I think the GRE probably next like 10 years or so is also going to be passed off, but for now, most schools do want it. So we'll dive into this more in a later meeting, but just as a general overview, it does have 3 sections. There's verbal reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and analytical writing. And then mostly for scores, you want 150 on verbal, 150 on quantitative, and a 4.0 on analytical. So if you have any questions on that, we will be diving deeper here in a couple weeks about all that fun stuff. So don't stress about that quite yet.
And then, yeah, just on that, again, we will go in way more detail about it, but I would plan to take your test and send your scores accordingly. So you should study for at least a month, at least, I would say. I studied for a month and I didn't do too great, but I'm not the best standardized test taker. So I needed a little bit more than that. So prepare to do that. Also, it takes at least 8 to 10 business days after the test to actually receive your scores. When you take the test, the verbal and quantitative portions are multiple choice, so you'll receive those scores right away. But obviously, the analytical writing, you're writing an essay, so it's going to take people a few days to grade that. And I also recommend, receiving your score first before you send them out, just, so you can see what you got before you send them away. So that takes 8 to 10 days, and then it might take additional days after that to send them to the PT programs. So don't take your test like a week before the applications due, because they won't get turned in time, and your application might be nulled. So make sure you plan very, very accordingly. And then, yeah, so on those same lines, we recommend that you start taking the GRE no later than 1 month. I would suggest more than that, so you give yourself more time to study, but no later than a month you should be taking that GRE. Yes. Yes. You can take it 5 times in 1 year. And the PT schools will take your highest score. It's not like the SAT where you can pick and choose and super score it, but it will take you the highest of all 3.
The score you said to pass?
150, 150, and 4.0.
Yeah, and I think the scale goes from 130 to 170 for the verbal and quantitative, and then for the analytical, it's from 0 to 6.0 with 0.5s in between. So you can get a 0.5, a 1.5, so on and so forth.
Honestly, just treat it as, well, what I'm doing anyway is I'll be taking it either late January, early February. So I'm gonna be treating this as like a winter course for myself. I'm giving myself January to study the hell out of this test and then take it. But I'm also not applying until summer. So if I do terrible, which could happen, my SAT was not great. But if I do terrible, then there's still time in March, April, or May to take that test again, also in the summer. So just plan it out. I would say, like Lindsay was saying, don't wait until a month before. Don't do that to yourself. Like plan it out. You're a good applicant. Don't rush it or leave things to the last minute. Do like 6 months to a year beforehand.
And then just last thing too, the GRE is like not the least important, obviously it's still required, but this is one of the things that they consider like the least. If you were to get a score that's slightly under these, I don't think it would be the end of the world. You might want to retake it again just to make yourself seem like a better applicant, but this is probably like the least important part of the entire application process. So I wouldn't stress about it way too much. But yeah, just make sure that you're doing things on time.
Yeah, with that said, if you do have a lower GPA, you probably want to do a little bit better on this. So again, it's
Mhm.
about balancing out your application. If you're low on one, you got to be high on everything else. But if this is your lowest, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yep. Alrighty, the worst part, my least favorite part at least. So personal statements and essays. So this is again alongside the observation hours, probably the most important part of the essay. Lily kind of already mentioned it, but about the letters of recommendation. But this is where you are going to tell the physical therapy school why you deserve to be there. You're going to go into detail about what traits that you have that would help benefit you. And this is where you're going to stand out from, that's your goal when you're writing this essay, is to make yourself stand out from other applicants. Like Lily said, most of us will have good grades going into the PT program. Most of us will have observation hours, but what is your story? Why are you here? That's what's going to draw the PT programs to choose you as a student. Just again, same with the GRE, give yourself ample time. Like I'll give you guys an example. I did not give myself ample time, and I felt like I was rushing under the clock to write this essay, because what you also want to do is make sure you have reliable sources to edit your essays. When I sent my essay to my reliable source, she returned it back to me and it was more red than it was black. So I had to go back and change a bunch of things, and I was not expecting to have to redo that at such a late period. So make sure that you give yourself time to not only write the essay, but also to get it edited. And when I say a reliable source, make sure that it's someone who will tear you up a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. If I were to have, let's just say my mom read my essay, she'd be like, oh, Lindsay, this was so good, even if it had like 100 errors. So make sure that you're sending it to someone who will actually like read it and tell you, be honest with you, if it's good or bad. So a few example prompts. The first one is the PT-CAS application prompt for right now. They're probably going to change it next year, or it might be very similar, but this is a good example. Every applicant is unique in their own way, possessing individual qualities, abilities, and backgrounds. What unique traits will you bring to physical therapy, and how will that help you to be successful? So again, talking about the traits that you have and how you will use it to be successful in the field. Another one, I think this is USC's essay, is physical therapy is an inherently service-oriented profession. Describe how in detail about how an experience in leadership or service has impacted your perspective of the world. So just adding in information about how you're a good leader, essentially. And then I believe this last one is for Mount St. Mary's. I think SDSU also has a very similar prompt. Again, all of these may change with the next year, but I would think that they're going to be very similar. Describe any significant challenges or hardships that you experienced and overcame that have contributed to your personal growth as you work towards a career in physical therapy. So they want to see how you problem solve, essentially. Any questions on the essays?
Yeah, did you send your essay to me to look at your essay?
So what the person that I sent it to was actually the same person that wrote my letter of recommendation. I made a really good connection with a physical therapist that I worked under. So I had her read it so that she went to physical therapy school and she did the whole thing. So she was able to pick me apart. If not though, honestly, any of us could also help you. Because especially like me, I already did the application. Hopefully I get in. So I can like give you guys some tidbits on hopefully how I did so. But yeah, like just honestly, even if you feel like your parents could like, be honest with you, that would be a good choice too. I'm just saying me personally, like my mom is my biggest fan. So she wouldn't have helped me much, unfortunately.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm again doing mine next summer, but I will likely be sending mine to my sister because she will tear me a new one when it comes to like grammar, writing, all that stuff. Substance wise, I'll probably send it to, like I said, probably people who are writing my letter of recs because they'll be able to tone in on that stuff. So it's really just, again, building connections, having people who you trust in academically, professionally, all that stuff. But I know a lot of you aren't necessarily applying this upcoming cycle. So again, don't stress too much about this stuff. This is more of when you're in your senior year, you start stressing a lot about it. But it's just good things to be aware of. And then another thing about personal statements and stuff, this is why getting those observation hours are important because now you can see how the skills that you've learned in other aspects of your life can apply towards physical therapy, and you can pull on all those experiences for your essays. So the more experience you have, kind of the better things you can pull from essays and in interviews, which we'll get into. But all right, and then some extra pieces to consider. So these are like some of your outside things that aren't necessarily written on the websites, right? So extracurriculars, that can be club involvement. So being a club part of this club here, you can write that on an application. Sports, volunteering, but outside of the PT realm. So even if you just volunteer at the local food bank or something, like that can be a way that you're giving back to your community, right? Tutoring, mentoring, etc. You can kind of tie in anything because those things make you, right? Your resume. So some programs may ask you to upload a resume. Just keep it updated and make sure it's geared towards physical therapy. If you've just worked a bunch of restaurant jobs, that's totally fine, but just maybe in the little blurb at the top, say something about this is helping me pay for school, or just connect it to physical therapy in some sort of way. And then interviews, like I mentioned, some schools require interviews. I feel like more are dropping off interviews now.
Yeah, ever since COVID, there used to be a lot of in-person
Yeah.
interviews. Like they would, if you wanted to apply somewhere in Florida, they'd make you fly out to Florida and do an in-person video. Yeah. But now there's a lot of like asynchronous options. I think one of the schools, CSUN, is doing something called Cura Talent. I haven't looked entirely into it yet, but it's like a asynchronous interview in the sense that it'll like pop up with a question and then you have like 5 minutes to make a video and respond. SDSU, on the other hand, they just have you make like a 3 to 5 minute video and then you just upload it. So all interview processes will look a little bit different. It might be coming back now that COVID is not a problem anymore. Again, though, it all depends on the university. I know Long Beach does not do any interviews. USC also does not do any interviews. So if that's something that you want to avoid, you can find that in the programs.
I believe I think like Chapman and some of the more privates, they do more in-person interviews still, or like a Zoom. So it really just depends on the program, what you're looking for. Keep in mind, I know we mentioned like, oh, Long Beach doesn't have interviews. You're like, great, don't have to worry about that. Long Beach is also, not to scare anybody, but it is also one of the highest applied to programs. And that could have something to do with it actually, but just keep that in mind. Like you're going to be applying to multiple things. Just be prepared for an interview.
And then that, the common interview questions, that's a link that I put in there. I think it has like 10 to 20 common interview questions. They'll be very similar to the essay prompts though, just really trying to get to know you and why you would be a good fit for the program.
Yeah. And then the last thing on here is like the supplemental application. So you will be doing the PTCAS application. That's for all of them. And then some schools require a supplemental application. So a lot of application again, set time aside for this stuff. So some of them, like all the Cal States, they have Cal State Apply. So that's San Diego State, Long Beach, CSUN, Sacramento. And then SDSU also has an additional one under Interfolio. And it's kind of confusing. Just again, when you guys get to that point, if you do have any specific questions, we're a good resource. Other people around you are a good resource. So it can be very overwhelming, but don't worry about it too much right now.
Yeah, and just know too, if the schools require PTCAS and Cal State Apply, the Cal State Apply is not important for the DPT program. It's just so that the graduate program knows that they can let you in. So you'll really put a bulk of your effort into the PTCAS, and then the Cal State Apply is just to make sure that like your GPA and your credits check out.
Yep.
Alrighty, perfect. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? We basically covered what your application process will look like. Again, when we email these out, these are all links for you guys. I mainly focus on schools in the area because that's what we got the most like interest from you guys. But in the meantime, I can go over how to look up these requirements. By show of hands, has anyone gotten the chance to look at Long Beach's DPT school website yet? A little bit. Do you guys want to go through that one and just take a look at it right now? Yeah? Okay, cool. Let's do that. I'm gonna stop sharing this screen really fast. There's me and everyone. And then I'm going to do this. Let's go back here. Share my Safari screen. Alrighty. So the first thing that I always start with is just the program. DPT. Okay, can't type. You can see all my purples. I've been here many times. So, to let you guys know, like I kind of mentioned, a lot of these PT programs, not just Long Beach's, but a lot of them have a lot of like sub places to click on. So just because we click on this overview does not mean this is all of the information. So make sure we're going through everything. This is just like letting you know about the program. You get a nice little video. But this entire site is for the physical therapy program. So we can see we have all of this information up here. Most of this is going to be for currently active students. Where we're going to be wanting to look is over here by the admissions interview overview. And we want to click here. And this is going to be everything that's going to help you in your process. So this breaks down all of the information. For those of you who were taking certain prerequisite courses over COVID, it kind of outlines that for you. So I don't know if you guys remember me mentioning, all of the classes that we mentioned need to have labs. But if you were in like a anatomy over COVID and you weren't able to do a lab, like it'll be okay, depending on when you took the class. So that's what all of that information is. And then here are our requirements. Just let you know that you need to have a bachelor degree before you can apply, or excuse me, before you can get accepted. Your bachelor's can be in progress, but while you're applying though. Let you know of the GPAs. So like we mentioned, 3.0 is usually the minimum, and then we tend to see GPAs of 3.5 or higher in order to be competitive. And then here is what will really be the biggest part to look for in all of the PT programs you're looking at is the prerequisite requirements, because like we kind of mentioned, most of the schools have little subtle differences. This is Long Beach's though. So it breaks down every single section, and it even is, again, very helpful to be an undergraduate student at Long Beach because they'll let you know exactly what classes here that you need to take to fulfill those. We can see here, like we kind of mentioned, general microbiome, which is bio 311. It can replace something. So you'll find all of that information here as well. The general chemistry, so on and so forth. So there's that. We also have the GRE, which breaks down all of the minimum. One thing that we forgot to mention, but we will when we talk about the GRE more in depth, each school has a specific code that you will send the essay or the GRE scores to. So when you're ready to do those are there. Those will be available under all DPT school sites as well. Experiences at sites, it breaks that down as well. Again, a minimum of 100 is for Long Beach's. Like we said, usually it's some schools that's at least 40. Other schools are going to be higher than that though. Especially the more competitive it is, the more hours you're going to need. Just think about it that way. I know CSUN as well requires 200. So, but that's the most I've ever seen. I don't think I've seen anything above 200. But that's why we say at least 100 would be good for your application. Letters of recommendation, kind of talked about that already. So they require the 3. And then for that third one, they say it should come from an employer, but if that's not available, then you can choose an academic reference or another PT. And then just the essay. And then, yeah, so you can just keep going through all of these. Like I said, there's a lot of sublinks, so make sure that you're reviewing all of them. This is basically breaking down the thing that we told you about the supplemental application. So you got all of the information for the PT CAS, as well as all of the information for the CalSTD Apply. Long Beach also lets you know how exactly they look at all of your things, how they rate all of your application requirements, and breaks down the tuition. If you guys want, you can go to information sessions. I think we've kind of posted those. Those would be really beneficial to attend as what's his name's Jeff Rodriguez. I think he's the admissions director of the DPT program. He's the one that leads the info session groups. So if you guys had the chance to like shake his hand and be like, hey, this is exactly who I am, so you'll be seeing my application soon, it's gonna be great because you're showing more effort than maybe another student. So yeah, so you're going to do this process for all of the schools that you plan on applying to. So whatever program you're looking for, DPT, and make sure that you find as many of those subset links as you possibly can, because information can hide everywhere.
I will also say Long Beach's probably has the best formatting for any of the schools. I'm sure you guys might remember that from applying out of high school or community college, at least for me when I was transferring. Long Beach, I was like, oh, it's so clear, like I know exactly where everything is. So sometimes you do have to dig a little bit on other websites, but keep finding, you'll find it. And then yeah, just make sure you look at every single link. It's there, I promise. Somewhere.
Yes, exactly. And we kind of helped you guys start off the process These are the links to the specific academic requirements and all of the things, but you might have to go back and do a little back and forth, look at different subset links and so on and so forth. Any questions? Thanks. Good. Alrighty, perfect.
Okay, so here are some of our just greatest takeaways in general. There's a lot of information that goes into these applications. Just make sure you pay attention to the details like that. If you miss one thing, you're automatically out. So just try and make sure at the bare minimum, you get everything turned in. Even if your GPA is low, even if all that stuff, even if you don't think you're going to make it in, just make sure you have everything in there. That's step one, right? Got to catch the ball before you can pass it. And it is a lengthy, time-consuming process, so give yourself time, plan it out. If you're still in your undergrad when you're applying, maybe take a look at your class schedule that semester, right? So for summer into fall, that's where a lot of your applications can come in. You do not want to be doing the bunch of essays and all that stuff while also taking, 19 units that semester. So just take that into account. And then your observation hours, letters of recommendation, and essays are the most compelling and important parts of the application. Your GPA, that can probably be written off about something. I know me personally, I went through some things early on in my career. It directly relates why I'm going into physical therapy, but that's what I'm going to talk about. So maybe my GPA isn't up here, but the essays is what's going to bring me back up, right? And then you've got this. I know it sounds scary. I know there's a lot of information, but there's a lot of resources out there to help you. Personally, Reddit can be fun. But genuinely, like, we are always a resource. You can also talk to professors. They've talked to countless students before you who are going through this process as well. And just take it step by step, right? One thing at a time.
Perfect. And that is it for our meeting about the prerequisites and all the admission requirements. Just another reminder, the mentor-mentee program is still open. We have about 2 weeks, give or take, until that closes up.
2 weeks exactly.
Oh, 2 weeks exactly. Yeah. So if you guys are interested, feel free to fill that out. Like we said, I mean, it's not a hard deadline. Like, we're not gonna not accept you if you fill it in on the November 1st, but just the sooner it happens, the sooner we can get you matched. And then same old clinical volunteering opportunities. Just by a show of hands, has anyone like reached out to any of these places so far? Cool, cool. Have you heard back?
Yeah, have we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay,
Nice.
awesome. So yeah, so just because we have a few people that maybe have taken the spots, I'm sure they'll allow more than one student to come in. So I was just mentioning to someone that PTs are usually like 9 times out of 10, honestly, like 99% of the time, are very, very, very willing to help you guys in any process, especially when it comes to observation hours. They completely understand how important it is. So if you reach out to anyone, if they don't respond to you, they're probably not worth your time anyways. So
that's what I tell myself anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Alrighty, and then some meetings that we have upcoming. Unfortunately, Alvin's not here yet. He's the one that's coordinating this program, but we have our first supplemental meeting coming up where the Western University's admission recruiter will be there, and he actually reached out to us wanting to talk out to you guys. So this is a really, really great opportunity. I think not to flex or anything, but clearly we're our group that people want to see applying to their programs. We didn't even reach out to them first. They reached out to us saying that they wanted to share to you guys this opportunity. So this would be a really, really great opportunity to make sure that you understand basically what we just talked about, all of the admissions requirements, but specifically for Western University, if that's something that you're interested in. Also gives you the opportunity to, I will say face to face, but it's not in person, so Zoom to face, whatever, to get your name out there to the people who will literally be reading your applications. So this will be next week on Wednesday, October 23rd at 5:30 p.m. on Zoom. We'll make sure that we get that Zoom link out to you guys as soon as possible. And yeah, like I said, we're just going to be talking about the program requirements, and then you can introduce yourself to that recruiter. And then our fourth meeting will be a Q&A with the CSULB SPTs. That's honestly probably my favorite meeting that I went to as a member, because you get the honest perspective of what PT school is like. Obviously, these admissions recruiters are going to paint the beautifulest picture for you guys, and we're going to get some honest truth of what PT school looks like to make sure that this is something that you guys want to go into. Usually we have our meetings every other week, but in 2 weeks it's Halloween. I don't want to keep you guys here on Halloween. I'd rather go out and do something fun. So we're pushing it 1 week after that. So it'll be Thursday, November 7th, and then the location and time will be determined. PT students, you know, they're very, very busy. So I don't know exactly what time they'll be available, but we will give that out to you as soon as we know. Hopefully it'll be in the right room this time. Fingers crossed about that as well. And that is it. So if any of you guys haven't gotten the chance to fill out our little check-in form, if you could please do that, that would be great. Other than that, if you have any questions, feel free to stick around. If not, then we'll see you in a week-ish, less than.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate it.